Now, speaking of Kenya, Tanzania's neighbour to the north is currently reviewing its Central Bank Act. There's a draft law out now, which some critics argue will essentially compromise the independence of the institution. The draft central bank bill, which is currently under review for public comment, splits the role of chairman and chief executive, which are both currently held by the governor, Jugunundungu. It also provides for the top management and the board members of the board members to be vetted by Parliament prior to their appointment, and it mandates the Monetary Policy Committee to make public the minute of their monetary policy meetings soon after decisions are made. Now, during Kenya's 2011 crisis, the opacity of decision-making at the central bank was one of the main criticisms levelled at the institution, and this law, in part, might help to resolve that. However, let's give you a broad overview exactly what the good and the bad elements of this proposed law are for East Africa's biggest central bank. And I'm joined by the head of banking research at Ecobank, George Bodo. He's live in studio with us tonight. George, thank you for your time as always. You've argued fairly ferociously online that this law, as currently drafted, compromises the independence of the Central Bank of Kenya. Why?
Absolutely. The new law creates two centers of power, which is not the right thing given the current environment. Central bank is a very important institution. If you look at some of these laws, especially the draft that is out, it was the origination of this draft was majorly out of what was seen as a war of, a war between Parliament and the central bank, especially the central bank governorship position. You remember in 2011 when we had a currency crisis, and there was so much noise about, especially from Parliament, about the opacity and the explanation that was offered by the governorship about the currency crisis. They were not satisfied, so they felt that a few changes need to be put. So hence the origin of the bill. And I think what it brings on board is really not what is required at the moment.
What is required in your view?
Look, the thing is that the Central Bank of Kenya, as it is right now, if you look at the Kenyan economy, there's an element of monetary policy dominance over fiscal policies. Some of the strategies, the monetary policy strategies that have come out of the central bank cannot be supervised. And if you look at the proposals for the bill, the monetary policy strategy, they look like they come from two areas, from the board of the central bank and the monetary policy itself. So how do you reconcile the two people? What happens if the board doesn't like where the monetary policy strategy is headed? What do they do with the governor? It can bring out a lot of issues.
Indeed. Let's focus on some of the glaring errors in this particular bill, specifically on the governance problems that it claims to want to solve. On one hand, there are provisions here for the chairman of the board, quote unquote, to be nominated by the president. But later on in the same bill, 39.5, I believe, it provides for the election of the chairman from among the non-executive members of the board. What other errors have you caught as you review this law? Absolutely.
It's not clear how there are two conflicting areas. There's in the hand of the president in appointment of the chairperson of the bank. There's also an issue, there's also mention of the chairman coming from among the board members. There's an internal selection committee, that it comes out, the board, basically, there's an internal mechanism at the hand of the president, so it's not clear. Apart from that, there's also the issue of emergency lending by the central bank, which is very important. This act states that the central bank cannot do lending, but it can, in exceptional cases, it can do emergency lending up to 182 days. Now, that's not enough. I think if you want to effectively bring down, especially, there's been much noise about lending rates. If you want to bring down the lending rates, I think the standing lending facility should be extended. The central bank should actually issue emergency loans up to 1 year, 2-3 years actually, what we call the long-term refinancing options. They should have those sort of bazooka they need to control the interest. As it is right now, it's not quite clear. It will not help,
Indeed. Let's get back to something you pointed out a little earlier, this requirement for vetting by members of parliament. Some have argued, in light of the vetting that we saw for, say, members of Judicial Service Commission, cabinet secretaries, that it's largely a cosmetic exercise and not particularly of any utility to the taxpayer. Would you agree?
I would not agree, but the point is that it's not about the cosmetism about it. If you look at the developed world, especially the US, there is an element of the central bank, updating and briefing senatorial committees, the select committees on the finance and the banking. Mm-hmm. But the problem with Kenya is that the quality of assessment that can come out of a parliamentary committee in Kenya is what is the problem, because will they be objective? We've seen the kind of assessments that have come out of Parliament today. If they want to assess the effectiveness of a monetary policy, I'm not sure if the quality of that discussion would be there in the first place. So it's a wrong audience, in my view, to have central bank governor addressing a parliamentary committee of the monetary strategies for the year. I don't think there's a quality discussion out of it, especially given the context of parliament is right now.
All right, unfortunately, we'll have to leave this conversation there. Thank you very much for your time this evening, George. Lovely to have you as always. That's George Bodo. He's the head of banking research at Ecobank, live in our studios here in Nairobi.